everyone, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to give you a tour of my Google Sheets meal planner and automated grocery list template. So what you're going to be able to do with this spreadsheet is save meals and then decide which items should be added automatically into your grocery list whenever you're cooking a specific meal, so that as you're meal planning, your grocery list is building itself. So the template is initially empty. You fill it out with your own information, and once you do, meal planning is going to look something like this. You're going to select meals from drop-downs and you're going to watch as the items needed for those meals get loaded automatically below. So you do that for every day of the week. Each day will get its final list for that day, and in the end, everything will be joined together automatically in a final grocery list for the week. Quantities will be added up. Each item will only show up once, and then you're going to be able to sort this list by item name, by category, or by grocery store. So as I mentioned, this is initially empty. You fill it out yourself with your own information, and as you add more and more information, planning your meals and creating your grocery lists is going to become easier. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how you customize the template, and I'm also going to talk about other cool features that are included. So if you already have the template, you can follow along filling out your own version, and if you don't have the template, you can find the link to purchase it in the description. So let's get into it. We're going to start by jumping into the item list tab. And this is where you're going to create a database that includes all of the items that you usually buy. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a list of your categories. You're going to do that right here. So this can be fruits, vegetables, dairy, meat, and so on. You get to customize your own categories. And then you're going to create a list of the grocery stores where you usually shop. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out with some example information. You can do the same thing. So once that's done, we're going to move on to creating our database for the items that we usually buy. So this is divided in two sections. You have a section for food items, and then you have a section for common household items. Both of them work exactly the same way. The only difference is that you're going to add the items that you're going to be using on your meals in this section right here, and then everything else, personal care, cleaning products, anything that's not a food item, you're going to add in this section over here. So for each item, you're going to start by giving it a name. So let's do apples, for example, and then you're going to assign a unit. So this is going to be the unit that you buy this in. So I'm just going to do pounds, and then everything else is optional. You can assign a category using the drop downs. You're going to notice that every single category that you customized over here is going to show up in your drop downs. You can also assign a unit cost. If you do decide to use this feature, you need to make sure that the unit and the unit cost make sense together. So for example, if you're using pound as a unit, you need to make sure that you're adding the unit cost for 1 pound. So let's just add an example. And then you can also assign a preferred grocery store. So whatever grocery stores you customized here are going to show up in your drop downs, so you can easily select them. So you're going to grow this database over time. As I mentioned, these 3 columns are optional. So adding a category and a grocery store is going to be useful to help you sort your final grocery lists. And then if you want to use the unit cost feature, what's going to happen is quantities on your final grocery lists are going to be multiplied by these unit costs, so you can get an idea of the approximate amount that you're going to pay for a specific grocery list. So if this is important to you, you can use this feature. If it's not, you can just leave it empty. And super important, item names must be unique across both tables. So I'm going to go ahead and add some example items. You can do the same thing. You don't have to create your entire database right now. You can maybe add 5 items on each section, so you have something to work with as you're learning how to use the rest of the template. So I added some fruits to start with, and I also added some common household items. So the item list tab will hold the database for the items that you usually buy, and then we're going to jump into the meal ideas tab, and this is where you're going to create a database for the meals that you usually prepare. So as you can see, there's 4 sections available, one for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack ideas. So this is how I chose to name them. If you want to change that, you can jump into the settings tab and you can change those right here and right here, and then the entire template will update. And the same thing goes for every other label in the template. If you want to change anything, you don't have to edit the actual template. You can just jump into this section, edit this your translation column over here, and then labels throughout the template will update automatically. So I'm just going to leave my sections as they are, but you can replace them if you like. So I'm going to jump back into the meal ideas tab, and I'm going to add some examples. And super important, in this tab, you're only going to edit cells that have a white background. This link column over here is automated. I'll talk talk about that later. So I'm just going to add some examples on each section. And you don't need to add this many. You can just add a couple of examples on each section just so you have something that you can work with in the next steps. So now we have the list of items that we usually buy and then the meals that we usually prepare. So the next step is to tell the spreadsheet which items we want added automatically into the grocery list whenever we select a specific meal. And we're going to do that in the meal ingredients tab. And this is what it's going to look like blank. So in this first column right here, the meal idea column, you'll find drop downs that include every single one of the meal ideas that you added in this tab right here. So in the example, I'm going to work with fruit salad. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that meal idea in the drop down. So you can either use the drop down and scroll to find the idea, or you can just start typing and then the list will get filtered so you can easily select your meal idea. And the first item that I'm going to assign to fruit salad is going to be apples. So I'm going to set a quantity. And then in this drop down, you're going to find every single one of the food items that you added in your item list tab. So again, you can use the drop down to find your item, or you can start typing and the list will get filtered. And you're going to notice that as soon as you select an item, the unit and the unit cost will be displayed automatically. They're being pulled from whatever it is that you customized in the item list tab, and then the total will be calculated automatically. So if I were to change the quantity to 2, you're going to notice that the total updates automatically. So you're going to do the same thing for every single item that you want added to a specific meal. You're going to select the meal idea, you're going to set a quantity, and then you're going to add your item. So it's super important that you repeat the meal idea on every single row for every single item. And once you select it the first time, adding it to the rest of the rows is super easy. You can just copy that first cell and then select as many rows as you need and paste. So as you're filling this out, you need to remember to always be thinking in terms of your grocery list. So you're not thinking in terms of the actual recipe, you're thinking in terms of whenever I'm cooking this, what do I need added into my grocery list? And these units right here, these are the units that you customized in your item list at the beginning. These are the units that you buy these items in. So your quantity and your unit need to make sense together. So for example, if you needed half a container of strawberries, you could do 0.5. And then if you needed a quarter of a pound of bananas, you can do 0.25. And super important, if you're using fractions, a fraction of something, you need to add them as decimals. If you do this, it won't work. If you need half of something, you need to add them as decimals. So when it comes to the quantity, you need to remember to always be thinking in terms of what do I need added into my grocery list when I select this meal. And then if you also want to keep track of the actual recipe measurement, you can use this column right here. This isn't connected to anything else. It's just for your own reference. So if you needed 2 cups of apples, for example, you can put that here. But then over here, this unit and this quantities, this is what you're going to have added automatically into your grocery list. So I added a few more items as examples. And what I like to do here is set the quantities that I need for just 1 serving. And then when I'm meal planning, I'll set how many servings I want for each meal each day, and the quantities will adapt automatically. So let me show you how that looks like. The template includes 5 weekly meal planner tabs. They all look and work exactly the same way. So I'm going to jump into week 1, and on each weekly tab, you'll find 7 tables that look exactly like this, 1 for each day of the week. And you're going to use these tables to create your meal plan for each day. So if you click on one of your breakfast drop downs, you're going to find a list of every single one of the breakfast ideas that you customized in the meal ideas tab. And the same thing is going to happen on every section. And right now we have only assigned items to fruit salad. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select fruit salad for this day. And what's going to happen is every single one of the items that I assigned to fruit salad is going to be loaded automatically down below. So this right here, this is going to be the final grocery list for the day. And as I mentioned, when I'm adding my quantities, I'm just adding enough for 1 serving. And then as I'm meal planning, I can use this column over here to set a different number of servings depending on what's going on that day, who's going to be eating at home. So I can do 2 servings, for example, and you're going to notice that my quantities doubled. If I do 3 servings, then my quantities tripled. So all that's happening here is the original quantities that I assigned are going to be multiplied by the number of servings. So you can do it this way, or you can just add enough quantities for the whole family and then then leave this cell blank and your original quantities will be left as you added them. So how you use this is entirely up to you, whatever makes sense for you. So whenever I select a meal that doesn't have any items assigned to it, you're going to notice that it's not going to get highlighted. You're not going to get the added automatically label over here, and nothing's going to happen to your grocery list. So you can still add those meals to your meal plan. They just won't have any items added automatically until you assign them in the meal ingredients tab. So I'm going to assign some items to vegetable soup. Right now I only have fruits in my database, so I'm going to jump back into my item list and I'm going to add some vegetables. So I added some vegetables to my database and now I'll see them in my drop down. So I'm just going to select vegetable soup and I'm going to add my first item, and then I'm just going to add 2 more. So now if I jump back into week 1, you're going to notice that vegetable soup now has items added automatically, and you'll find those items in the list down below. And if for some reason you don't want items to be loaded automatically, you can just go ahead and set this skip option over here. And as you can see, every single one of my items disappeared. So you can use this whenever you're having leftovers, for example, and then to bring them back, I can just select this skip option, press delete on my keyboard, and that brings them back. If for some reason you don't want any items to be loaded automatically, you can just uncheck this box, and then whatever you add here will never load any items automatically. So I'm going to bring them back. This final list over here, this is completely automated. You should never try to edit it directly. You're going to get an error if you try. So if you want to manually add or remove any items from this list, you're going to do it using this section over here. So all you have to do is set the quantity and then select the item, and you're going to notice that it gets added automatically into the list. You can also increase quantities, so I can do maybe an extra pound of bananas aside from what I already had, and you're going to notice that the quantity increased. And then to remove items, you can use negative numbers in your quantities, so I can do minus 0.25 and then apples, and that's gonna bring my quantity down to 0. So every single one of these 7 days looks and works exactly the same way. You're only gonna edit cells that have a white background. Everything else is automated. Your final list for the day will be created in this section right here, and then the items for all 7 days will be joined together automatically in your final grocery list for the week. So quantities for each item will be added up automatically, and each item will only appear once. The category, the grocery store, the unit cost, and the total for each item will all be shown automatically based on the information that you customized on your item list. And then you can sort the table using these drop downs over here. So you can sort by category, you can sort by grocery store, or you can sort by item name. And this table is completely automated. You should never try to edit it directly. If you need to make any changes, you can use these 2 additional sections over here. So this first one is meant for food items, and then this second one is meant for common household items. So in these drop downs, you're not going to find any food items. You're only going to find the list of common household items that you created over here. So whatever you add here is going to be automatically added into your final grocery list for the week. And then if you need to add or remove any food items, or you need to alter quantities, you're gonna do that in this table over here. So I can add another pound of bananas, for example, and you're gonna notice that my quantity for bananas increased automatically. And then if you wanted to decrease quantities or remove items, you can use negative numbers. So for example, I can get rid of my container of blueberries. So I'm just gonna do minus 0.5 because that's the quantity that I have over here, and then I'm gonna select blueberries, and you're gonna see that blueberries disappeared from the list. Now up here you'll find some checkboxes that will allow you to customize your list a bit more. So quantities for every single item that you included on your weekly meal plan will be added up automatically. If that amount results in a 0 or a negative number as your quantity, those items will be removed from your final grocery list by default. If you want to display them, you can use these checkboxes over here. So you can see a counter. There's 2 items that that have 0 as their quantity, and right now there aren't any items that have a negative number. So if I check these boxes, those items will be included in the list. You can choose to show them, and you can also choose to show them and scratch them automatically. So you can scratch zeros and you can scratch negative numbers. So this is completely dynamic. You can check and uncheck these boxes as often as you need. Super important, if your quantities are 0 and you're using the unit cost feature, your total for that item will be 0. So if you want to use this feature and you want an item to be considered in your totals, you need to make sure that your items have a positive number as their quantity. So if you need to increase your quantities, you can always do it using this section over here. So as you can see, apples now has a quantity. It also has a total. So I included these checkboxes to give you flexibility over your list. You can do whatever makes sense to you. You can keep them unchecked or you can check them, entirely up to you. So you get 5 weekly tabs, and each of these tabs has its own final grocery list for the week. Now I realized that some of you shop monthly or every other week. So to help you merge weekly lists into a single list, I also included a monthly grocery list tab. So the first thing you're going to do in this tab is you're going to double click on the start day cell, and you're going to select the date in which you want your first week to begin, and then dates throughout the template will update automatically. So in the monthly grocery list tab, you're also going to find these filters over here, and you can use these checkboxes to control which are the lists that are going to be joined together in a single monthly grocery list. So right now we've only worked on week 1, so if I check this box, those are the items that are going to show up in my list. If I jump into week 2, maybe add 1 meal, those items will be loaded over here. They will also be loaded into my final grocery list for week 2. So if I jump back into my monthly grocery list and I check the box for week 2, you're going to notice that my list updates. So now this list includes everything that I need for week 1 and week 2. And again, this is completely automated. You should never edit this manually. If you need to add or remove items, you can use these 2 sections over here. This first one is meant for food items, and then the second one is meant for common household items. So similar to what we've been doing before, you can use positive numbers to increase quantities, and you can use negative numbers to decrease quantities. And you can use this drop down over here to sort your list. And you can also use these checkboxes to display any items that ended up with 0 or a negative number as their quantity. Again, you can scratch them. So it works exactly the same way as the weekly grocery lists. The only difference is it's joining together all of the items for the weeks that you selected over here, plus the items that you added over here. So when you're ready to go to the grocery store, you have 2 options. You can print your list or you can bring it with you on your phone. Now, if you decide to bring the list with you on your phone, it's super important that you never try to edit this column manually. I left it empty so you would have space for a check mark if you decide to print the list. But if you're going to bring it with you on your phone, you should never try to edit this column manually. And the reason for that is that this table is dynamic and it's going to update with every change that you make. So if I were to add something here, let's say an X, for example, first I'm going to get a warning because I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm just going to click on OK. So let's say I added an X there. If I sort the list will update, but my X will remain where I added it and it will no longer be tied to the original item. So I included an additional tab in case you wanted to bring the list with you on your phone and you also wanted to have checkboxes. It's this digital checklist tab down here. So this tab is initially empty. You can either add manual items over here or you can copy any list that you created dynamically, paste it over here, and then use the checkboxes to cross items off your list. So you can copy and paste any of your weekly grocery lists or you can copy and paste your monthly grocery list. So either way, the proper way to copy and paste is to start by selecting the list that you want to copy. You're going to start from the very first quantity all the way to the very last unit cost. Super important, you're not including any headers in your selection and you're also not including the total. So you need to make sure that these are the only columns that you're selecting from every single item in your list. So once you do that, you're going to copy and then you're going to jump into your digital checklist and you're going to select this first quantity cell over here. And then to paste, you need to paste in a special way so you don't mess up the formatting. So you're going to right click and then you're going to select the option paste special values only. So this is going to make sure that you're only bringing your text with you and you're not bringing any formatting that could mess up the scratching effect. So once I click on that, your items appear in the list. Your total is going to update automatically. You should only edit cells that have a white background in this tab. You should never edit this column over here. And once you have it like that, you can go ahead and use the checkboxes to cross items off your list. You can also add items manually. You can add notes. You can change the unit cost. You can manually change quantities. You can do whatever you want here. It's not going to affect any other part of the template. So you can use this additional tab if you want a digital checklist. You can also just view this dynamic list on your phone, or you can print it. So that's the basic functionality of the template. You make a list of the items that you usually buy, the meals that you usually prepare, and then you decide which items should be added automatically into your grocery list whenever you select a specific meal. And then you use the meal planner tabs to plan your meals for each week, one day at a time, and your final grocery list for the week will be created automatically. Now, I also added a couple other additional features throughout the template that you might find useful. I'm going to jump into a version that's filled out a bit more so I can show them to you. The first one is the calendar, and what this is going to do is it's going to display your meal plan for each week in a single big calendar. So anything that you add over here is going to be displayed in the calendar in its corresponding day. So this entire tab is completely automated. You should never edit it manually. Dates will be filled automatically according to the start day that you select in your monthly grocery list tab. So you can see your meal plan for all 5 weeks together in a single view, and you can also print it if you like. And then I also included a mini expense tracker. You're going to find it at the very end of the monthly grocery list tab. And the way this works is you're only going to edit cells that have a white background. So you're going to start by setting a budget for each week. You're going to do that manually. This isn't connected to any other part of the template. So once you see your total approximate amount for a specific week, you can decide what your final budget for the week is going to be. And then whenever you pay for something, you can add a transaction down here. So you can add the amount that you paid, and then you can assign that to a specific week. And you're going to notice that the actual amount for that week was updated automatically, and then the difference was also updated automatically. And then if you double click on any of these date cells, you can also set a date that's going to be for your own reference. It won't affect the week that this amount goes to. What matters is this drop down selection over here. And then I also added some links and lookup sections throughout the template to help you navigate it. So the first one is found in the item list tab. If you scroll to the very end, you'll find this item lookup section. So you'll see every single one of your items in this drop down, and you can start typing to look for something. And then if you select the item, you can use this go link over here. You can either click or hover over it, and then you click on this blue link that appears, and that's gonna jump into the exact cell where that item can be found. Now in the meal ideas tab, you're gonna find these links over here next to each meal. Originally, you're just gonna see a go label that doesn't do anything, but after you assign items to those meals in the meal ingredients tab, this is going to turn into a link. So if you hover over it, or if you click on it and then you click on this blue link, you're gonna jump to the first item that is assigned to that meal. So you can easily find that section if you need to make any changes. So it turns into a link as soon as you add items to that meal. And then in the meal ingredients tab, if you scroll all the way to the end, you're gonna find this dynamic table over here. So this is displaying every single one of the meals that has items assigned to it. It's also going to calculate the total for each meal depending on the items, the quantities, and the unit costs that you assigned. So initially you're gonna see the entire list, but you can choose to filter only breakfast ideas, lunch ideas, for example, and then you can sort it by total. You can sort it by meal idea. If you have all of them there, you can also sort it by section. And then you can use these links over here to jump into the first item that you assigned to that meal. So this list over here is completely automated, and you should never try to edit it manually. And throughout the template, whenever you see something that's underlined, that's a link that you can use to jump into a particular section. You can either hover over it or click on it, and then you click on this blue label that's going to appear, and that's going to jump into that section. And then on each weekly tab, I also included an item lookup and a meal idea lookup. So you can use these drop downs to find items. Once you select an item, you can use this link to jump into that particular item in your item list tab. And then the same thing goes for the meal idea lookup. You'll find every single one of your meals in this drop down. And once you select a meal, you're going to see every single one of the items that you added for that meal down here. You'll also also see a link that's going to help you jump into the first item that you assigned to that meal. So those are all the features that are included in the template. It does take some time to create your database, but the more information you add, the easier your meal planning is going to become. So you'll only think about this stuff once you build a really good database, and then meal planning will become as simple as selecting meals from dropdowns and watching as your grocery lists are created automatically. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to leave my email in the description. And if you don't have the template already, you can find the link to purchase it in the description. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.